Hello, hello, hello. Today, we're going to talk about Ronaros rings. I decided to revisit this topic because we got the Land of the Morning Light and then Dawn's gloves, and I did some testing, did some running around, been swapping main hands, been swapping classes, and just trying out if these rings are now at least viable to a certain degree. And honestly, they are actually pretty good for DR builds. Evasion has always been able to hit really high DP brackets because they use Kudum or they use an Eva offhand, whatever the case is. They usually can reach high DP brackets, whereas DR was stuck, kind of floating around the 370 to 380 DP marker with Nuver. So we were always at somewhat of a tanky disadvantage when it came to that. We traded it for accuracy because evasion couldn't really get as high as it needed to be, so that way it's effective. But now it's getting to the point where evasion is becoming slowly more and more viable and more of a problem for DR classes because the price for accuracy accessories are just through the roof. I mean, like just for one pen Dawn, you're looking at 200 billion silver just for one. Meanwhile, you've got centaurs that are, going for min bid at 24 bill, Cecil necklaces going for the near about the same thing. So it's like for the price of, both my Ronaros rings, pretty much, I can get a Cecil's or a centaurs. Which is kind of, it's a little balancing there is a little weird. So my thought process was, how can I try and reach high DP and DR brackets to feel tanky enough to where it makes a difference? Now, I did a lot of this testing on Succession Warrior, Awakened Warrior, as well as Berserker and Valkyrie. Pretty much the tankiest classes within the game that are within reason. And I've also been talking to people that use Ronaros rings on other classes like Guardian, and like DK, for example, that they've tested it on. And realistically, those classes, Guardian for whatever reason just doesn't feel as tanky as it should, which is kind of weird because like their shield is really strong, but once you break through that and you get them on the floor, they pretty much fold like a lawn chair, which is kind of crazy. I thought they would be a lot more tankier with a build like this, but you rarely even notice much of a difference in tankiness when wearing this kind of setup. The Narcs make sense, but the Ronaros rings, I don't think it makes a lot of sense to run that on Guardian. I just don't see any benefits in it. You can be tanky-ish, but like I said, once you get on the floor, you're pretty much gonna get bodied by anything. So I don't, maybe it's because she doesn't have DR passives or something like that, but it's a little strange for a class like Guardian to not be as the same benefit of tankiness that Succession Warrior has. Crit, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of just stuff that doesn't actually really, like, you don't get a lot of DR benefits from this, whereas like Suck Warrior gets DR passives that are super high in value. So it makes sense that Guardian's not nearly as tanky and doesn't benefit from the same DR as Suck Warrior. So I just wanted to double check that. But yeah, I mean, for whatever reason, it's like that. So maybe don't try this on that class specifically. I think it can work and you can probably make some kind of benefit if you're just trying to reach the 401 DP bracket and you have the gear to maintain brackets that are important. Then you can get away with it. But if you're like a gearlet and you're like, barely breaking 290 AP with a Nuver, that might not be your best option, just because you'd find more benefits in just being, able to one-shot people versus, trying to be a tanky, ridiculous class. And Guardian to me is not much of a support class in terms of like you're playing around people. You are kind of the baseball swinger, you're the one stepping up to the plate and you're just whacking everybody down, the field, right? Whereas Succession Warrior doesn't really do that. He has a lot of tools in his kit to make him very good at making the opponents uncomfortable. He's got a really annoying slow. You gotta worry about his grab. You have to worry about all the stiffs and like stuns that he has. He's a very annoying character to be in a group fight with. Very good if he's on your side, but if you're fighting one, it can be the most annoying thing ever, just because you are just constantly getting slowed, debuffed, and it's just a non-stop DP shred and slows from ground smash and everything. It's pretty annoying. Not to mention that if you try and focus him and you have a decent tank setup, you might just open yourself up to death. I can't tell you how many times people have just dogpiled on top of me in like a ball and I've survived, and then I just had somebody walk up and just kill 5 people. It's pretty crazy how tanky you can actually get with this kind of build on the right class. Valkyrie, even the same department too. She has actually, I think, a better time with this because of the Offen, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But Valkyrie gets a lot of accuracy passives, and she also has an accuracy buff too, so she has a lot more tools to make this kind of build a little bit more spooky, which I think that's something that I would like to test a little bit more. I've yet to really hop on Valkyrie and just full on send on it. I did some like GVGs and node wars with her, but for the most part I haven't like full on sent in just to kind of get the appropriate data I would need to even remotely say that this would work. But I don't see why it wouldn't, because I've ran an even worse build than this. I've ran double Cadres before, and we're killing people, so I can only imagine what this is like. So obviously with this gear right here, it's pretty ridiculous, right? Like obviously you're gonna get a stupid amount of DR, and I mean I'm running like, you know, calc elixirs, giants, and the DR house buff. As for crystals, we're running the my KD resist build, which is going to be, you know, the knockdowns, and then we're having all the new crystals, basically every DR crystal that's relevant, that's not the what do you call it, the dark red fangs. I don't like really care too much about the red ones, because sometimes what people will do is they will swap out the KD resist and put the red fangs in there for the AP. I don't know why you would do that, because people just think that you can't fit any more like tankiness or HP. I chose the knockdown because Suck Warriors only KDs are like the ones that matter, because everything else is a bound, everything else is a float. So like the KDs that he only has one protected KD, and it's a forward guard, so we need to guarantee that as much as physically possible. But if I were to just say forego the tankiness, right, or forego the HP and the knockdown resist, I would swap these out for another like damage reduction thing. So for example, right, we could put another Jin Kobe in, or we could even do you know, one of these right here, which is, you know, the 5 DR, which you could push 590 close to 600 with this. So if we put in another Kobe, for example, and then we put in this right here, you can see that our DR on the right here goes up to 593, which is pretty obnoxious. But I think that's a bit overkill for the state of the game right now, so it's kind of whatever. So I can understand why people are putting the dark red fang AP crystals in just to boost their damage up, but for Suck Warrior, I don't think it's necessary. It's a little strange. All right, so let's address the elephant in the room, okay? So as I said, this gear is a bit ridiculous. Like getting to this point is like you're looking at a lot of time, but the Offen Tet is actually kind of a nice choice, but for a different reason. One, evasion's a problem right now. It's very difficult to deal with an evasion class, not to mention Succession Warrior specifically is a kind of accuracy starved class. We have like one Eva shred ability, and it's solar flare, and it's like 6%. So you have to really tailor add-ons to if you're gonna try and use this in 1v1s, which I don't recommend. I don't do 1v1s with an Offen Tet. I go back to the Black Star and I lose the 309 bracket, which is fine. Suck Warrior doesn't really need it, but for the most part, when I'm doing open world large scale, I want as much damage as physically possible. So I will run the 309 with an Offen Tet, and if I'm in a group fight with people I know who will, you know, peel for me, that will follow up, and that I can follow up on them, being able to use the Offen Tet on certain DR classes, I can like one-shot people, which is pretty crazy. But this comes at a price though, the accuracy loss, and if you're playing a class that's accuracy starved like Suck Warrior. But if you play something like Valkyrie that's not necessarily accuracy starved, and you like Succession, for example, this could be a benefit for you to some degree. I still wouldn't really recommend it because this is not future proof. If you use an Offen Tet, you are just setting yourself up for failure. The only reason I'm using an Offen Tet is because I wanted to test the 309 bracket, how effective it is, and how like bad the accuracy loss really is. And for me specifically, if I wasn't as geared as I was, the accuracy loss would be much more damaging for my build than anything else. But for you, I would never recommend going for an Offen if you are a gearlet. If you just have spare income and spare Caphras like I did to just test the, you know, the ability, by all means go for it. But I would never recommend a player just like, all right, go for this build right here, because this falls off. The more evasion, the more worse this is. Like, it's terrible. Once we get artifacts, this is not even feasible anymore. This isn't even on the radar. Like, you don't even bother. It's not even on the radar. It is not physically possible to run this once artifacts come into play. You will never kill an evasion player again. Don't bother. This is just something that I decided to do for testing so I could make a video about it. All right, so let's kind of break away from the big, Bambino build here. Let's go to something a little bit more practical, okay? So something like this could actually be pretty feasible for most players that you could maybe get away with at this current time. The Offentet, as I mentioned, if you're willing to just go that mile for it, you can get away with it. You're looking at 305, 290, 401. You still maintain 826 accuracy, which is actually still viable to kill some players, but not everything. But you're also maintaining 580 DR across the board. This is with the KD resist crystals again, as well as the consumables. This is the elixir rotation. If you don't want to do the elixir, you can just do the cheap buffs and you lose a little bit of DR, but still 570 is pretty damn tanky still. Now, the reason for the Tri-Dandy is that this is basically the same thing as a Pen Black Star when it comes to accuracy. So if we take a look here, total AP is 570, and then we've got the all accuracy 826, all right? So if we swap to a Pen Black Star, you can see 826. So if all you care about is the accuracy and you're just trying to reach that high-ish accuracy marker, then you're gonna want to go ahead and go with a Tri-Dandy and C19, because that's going to give you pseudo 826 accuracy. You lose the AP and you're not going to really be able to viably kill people, probably in Awakening for Warrior specifically. I mean, you might be able to. 290 still actually a lot of AP. You can probably one combo somebody. But it's not something I would recommend. So for the most part, if you're gonna run a Dandy Greatsword, that's fine. Do it at Tri. If you don't plan to play any Awakening whatsoever, that's cool. And you could get like a Tet Black Star for grinding, so that way you can still reach good brackets and you can also get that mob damage too. Now again, the Offentet is the elephant in the room. Again, I cannot wholeheartedly recommend this. I think it's cool to reach high brackets yet again, but you are only gimping yourself to a point of just frustration, where once you fight an EVA player that has really heavy evasion, you are not going to be able to kill them whatsoever unless you just are that guy and you multi-combo them until they pass away. So the better option would go with a C9 Zarka. You still have the 301 bracket, which, mind you, that is still very strong for Succession Warrior and still very strong for Valkyrie too. So 301 with those two classes specifically, you can definitely get away with that, and you're still maintaining good AP and accuracy. So in my personal opinion, the Zarka is still the way to go, and Pen Black Star is the way to go. Offentet, if you're feeling spicy and you want to just be different, but you're just like I said, gimping yourself for the future. Now let's talk about accuracy. Okay, now I wanted to bring this up. This really has nothing to do with Ronaros rings, but I wanted to talk about it because of the Offen and the way that you can get away with certain things with DR specifically. So like for Succession Warrior, as I mentioned, our huge downfall is our accuracy. We are completely accuracy starved, right? So one of the ways that you can overcome that is with something like this. This is what I like to call the Walmart accuracy, because pretty much like, it's like pendants, and it's like, we have pendants at home kind of situation. Red coral earrings are pretty, they're like 10 bill a pop, and for the price of one disto you could get both, and it gives you the same amount of accuracy as a Tet Dawn, which for the most part, as much as I like to say go for a pendant, as I mentioned earlier, we're talking about a 200 billion silver cost, and the price increase is so ridiculous. Like, look at this, 34 accuracy. Okay, I'm not spending 200 billion silver. I say that like I haven't already, but I wouldn't do it again. I would not do it again. 8 accuracy or 4 accuracy is not even remotely, it would be 8 if you got both, but it's not worth it. I just don't see a benefit in that regard. The only reason that you would go that route is because you want to maintain brackets above, the ridiculously high area. And I just don't see any value in doing that. I really don't. If you can still maintain 301 with this kind of setup with the red corals, I would just do this, like, because this will still be enough to kill majority of players for the most part, and you're still maintaining 559 DR, which at the moment on console is still actually very high and can still provide a lot of tankiness, but now you at least have accuracy to actually hit pretty hard. The only downside to the corals is that you can't cup them, which gives an extra 6 it's 6 AP, so it's not exactly the best option in my personal opinion. And as far as the ominous rings go, the only reason I put these here is so you can reach ridiculously high AP brackets, or not AP, ridiculously high accuracy, which 937 I wouldn't even say is that ridiculous, but mind you, we are using a C15 often. If you were to swap this up to a black star, I mean, that, you know, goes up by a little bit right there, so it's not terrible per se. But for the most part, it really just comes down to if you're willing to go the, you know, route of getting multiple accessories for different scenarios, which I think is the part that's turning off a lot of players to playing DR classes right now, because the amount of like accessories that you have to swap around, like you see 1, 2, 3, 4 evasion players in a guild, or that you're at a GVG and it's just nothing but Eva memes. You're going to be pretty much defaulted and relegated to this build 24/7, and you're not going to run this because, you know, this doesn't have the accuracy to kill shit. So even though 309, 310, yeah, you can kill DR targets very easily, but you see one Eva meme, oh, just forget it, just walk away, because you're not going to kill them. So that's how the Ronaros rings kind of tie into the ominous and red corals, is like, if you're going to run these, you really are going to have to kind of get a secondary set, because the normal person is going to run like Eye of the Ruins or something, right? So they're going to run something like this, and this is what their build's going to probably look like with a pen black star. So this right here is still pretty viable for the most part. 317 AP is super overkill for warrior, or for succession warrior. You really don't need that, which is why I opted for the Ronaros ring, so I could reach the 401 DP bracket, because warrior in succession, even awakening, does not really need this much AP. You really do not need that much, which is why you forego a lot of the, you know, high AP brackets, and you start to build tanky, so that way you can try and have more survivability, you can be more of a nuisance on the battlefield, that kind of thing. So even though this is viable, this is totally viable right here, this is what I would classify as, you know, just the standard DR AP build pretty much. You still want to get narc, so that way you don't lose any heavy DP, because running distos doesn't make sense for DR in PvP unless you're one of those classes that has mad iframes and can get away with it. But for a shield class that's holding block, or that doesn't have a lot of protected movement, like for example, Valkyrie's got a lot of gaps in her movement, same with Suck Warrior. His movement is not that it's gaps, it's that most of his big movements is forward guard, so if you get shot from behind or anything like that, you get, you know, stiffed, stunned, knocked, whatever. But overall, for sure, Suck Warrior and Valkyrie, you can get away with this. It's a really nice build for the most part. You can reach 401 DP with just duo Fallen God and duo Dawn's Gloves. And if you're one of those lucky people that has all pen accessories up there, you can still maintain pretty ridiculous brackets. Again, often Tet, don't recommend. Just go with like a Tet Black Star or something, or and just keep swinging for pen. If you really want to, you can just run like a C9, Zarka, and that'll put you at the 302 bracket or 301 bracket, and that's more than adequate for Suck Warrior. He just does a lot of damage in relation to just every other class, so that's why tankiness, you can build that on him because he can get away with it. Also, remove the Khan's Heart. I just have this on here because I have a Khan's Heart, so that's my fault. But like you could do like a DP stone if you really want to and get kind of super obnoxious with it. So put a DP stone on, and gives you a little bit more DR here, so that's an option too. That 10 DR is kind of nice. So in my personal opinion, this would probably be the best thing to run for Suck Warrior. The attack speed is really good if you were to run the actual stone, the Resplendent Stone of Destruction. Even a Sharp is okay, but I think you'll just get more tanky benefits from this Resplendent. Even the Perla Star is not bad either. It's got HP too. The only problem is like you lose 5 DR, but still, that's honestly a drop in the bucket. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Ronaros rings. I think they're viable. I think they're good for right now. Later, they might fall off a little bit later, but as of right now, if you are a DR class, Suck Warrior, Awakened Warrior, Valkyrie, Guardian, you could probably make these work for sure. I highly recommend that you don't do the often, and the Tri-Dandy is still a thing. If you don't have a pen black star, then if you want the accuracy of a pen black star, try C19 Dandy is the move. So yeah, that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Talk to you guys later. Bye bye.